Welcome back, everyone. This is the Oracle Decodes Halloween and the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. In this piece, we're going to take a look at the holy day or holiday we commonly celebrate as Halloween, and we'll do this through decoding what is known to be America's first and arguably most famous of all ghost stories, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. This short story written by Washington Irving was published in 1820, making this, the year we commonly call 2020, to be the 200th year anniversary of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. You can find this story on this website here, Lit2Go, for free. But for this decoding, we're going to just give the highlights of the story as we plug the elements of it into the sky story here. So we're starting out with a screenshot we've queued up from Stellarium once again, from someone on the Earth in what we commonly call America, because that's where the Legend of Sleepy Hollow comes from, right? And we're looking up at that special place in the sky we call the real oracle or the real all-seeing eye. And as we've seen in all of our other decodings, this amazing discovery, it turns out, holds all the keys to unlocking the real meaning and purpose of the most famous stories on Earth, like this one. You find the real oracle or the real all-seeing eye by facing due south, indicated on the image by the green line called the north-south meridian line. And where that crosses the red arc on the image, this is known as the arc of the ecliptic. And from that area down to the Earth's horizon is where you'll find the real oracle or the real all-seeing eye. The red arc of the ecliptic is where you'll find all the known zodiac constellations, the sun, the moon, and all the known planets as they travel along, rising in the east and setting in the west. We're looking up at this real oracle at midnight on the day we commonly celebrate as Halloween, or what we call October 31st. As the story opens in the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, we're first introduced to the Headless Horseman character, said to haunt the town of Sleepy Hollow, and we learn that he's thought to be the ghost of a soldier who lost his head due to being hit with a cannonball during the Revolutionary War, and has been haunting Sleepy Hollow ever since, carrying a flaming jack-o'-lantern for a replacement until he finds a victim so he can take their head for a replacement instead. We see from the Stellarium screenshot at midnight on Halloween that just above the western horizon there in Sleepy Hollow, you find the constellation of Aquarius. And just like we've seen before in our series Jesus starring Orion and Sun, many storytellers in the past have told stories about characters losing their heads, corresponding with this specific constellation, like we saw with John the Baptist in the story of Jesus in the Bible. And this is because, as you can see, by how Aquarius is shaped in the sky story, it appears, indeed, as if someone has lost their head, doesn't it? Aquarius is where you'll find the specter of the Headless Horseman in Sleepy Hollow, in combination with the constellation we call nowadays Pegasus, the winged horse. Just above, you can see the constellation of Aquarius here in this screenshot. Pegasus is the ghostly horse the Headless Horseman rides on in the Legend of Sleepy Hollow in the tale as it's told. As the story progresses, we're introduced to the other main character, Ichabod Crane, a man who's newer to the area of Sleepy Hollow, we're told, and his profession is that of a school teacher, and he is also a singing tutor on the side. He's a man of little money, and we're given throughout the story a description of him physically that matches what you can see in this illustration from a cartoon of Ichabod Crane drawn by artists at Disney. And likely this is the way most of us today are familiar with the Legend of Sleepy Hollow and the character Ichabod Crane. In the story, we're told that Ichabod is tall and lanky, with big ears, a long neck, and a long nose. And if you look at what's lined up right in the middle of the cross of the north-south meridian line in the arc of the ecliptic, you'll find the constellation known nowadays as Cetus the Whale, with its long neck and long nose too. But for the Legend of Sleepy Hollow story, this is going to be Ichabod Crane, found at midnight on Halloween, to be center stage in the sky story here. We're going to move ahead 3 more hours now into the Halloween sky story, where you can see the constellation of Cetus, or Ichabod Crane, in the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, is now found to be just above the western horizon of the Earth, along with the constellation known nowadays as Pisces, the two fishes, representing the next character in sequence that we're introduced to in the legend of Sleepy Hollow. Katerina Van Tassel is the name of Ichabod Crane's love interest in this story, or in other words, you can see in the sky story, Cetus or Ichabod has eyes for Pisces, or Katerina Van Tassel. As you can see again by the way that Katerina Van Tassel has been drawn by these illustrators, they included certain elements to make sure that we would encode this knowledge or decode it properly. What she's actually encoding for is the constellation of Pisces in this specific alignment. Her last name is Van Tassel, the V corresponding to the way that the constellation of Pisces is shaped with what appears to be tassels on the ends of it, right? The tri-pointed headscarf she's wearing corresponds to the triangular shape overall of the constellation of Pisces, and even the umbrella she's holding looks like a reinterpretation to this storyteller of the constellation of Pisces and its location, overhanging the Earth's horizon in the west. And even the cross pattern on the front of her dress encodes for that special crossing point into the Earth's horizon over the west, where Pisces, or in this story, Katerina Van Tassel, is about to descend. Next in the sequence of the legend of Sleepy Hollow, we're introduced to Ichabod Crane's rival for Katerina's heart. He's a strong, muscular man with both an outgoing and arrogant temperament, as we're told, and goes by the name of Brom Bones. But as we learn in the legend of Sleepy Hollow, a fact that almost seems unnecessary to mention, we're told that this character's real name is Abraham, and it's a tie-in to the biblical character Abraham. That's what it really is. But like I mentioned when we were decoding the Islamic Kaaba, we would get back to the story of Abraham and his son Isaac from the Bible, a decoding that is still yet to come. And this reference at that point will make sense then. In the legend of Sleepy Hollow, Brom's last name is Bones. So we're looking at this character corresponding to the constellations known nowadays as Taurus the Bull, looking to this storyteller much like the crossbones you'd be familiar with on a pirate's flag perhaps, in combination with the constellation of Orion. And it's this combination of Taurus and Orion in the sky story is what corresponds to Ichabod Crane's rival in Sleepy Hollow, Brom Bones. The illustrators of this character, Brom Bones, encoded this information of what he really represents right down to the arm positioning. You can see where Brom Bones has one arm up and one arm out, just like the constellation of Orion. And if you look above Orion's arm, that's above his head, you'll find always the constellation of Auriga, found encoding this constellation in the barrel Brom Bones is holding above his head in the illustration. Also notice to the east side of Orion from our viewing perspective, you find the constellation of Gemini, or the twins as they're known nowadays. And just like we've seen before in many of our other decodings, this is going to again correspond to a double role in the legend of Sleepy Hollow. And this time we're going to see it's Brom Bones who will be playing two roles in the story. Next in the sequence in the legend of Sleepy Hollow, Ichabod Crane attends a party at the house of his love interest, Katerina Van Tassel, and her family, a party that his rival Brom Bones also attends. It's at this party Brom Bones tells his tale of narrowly escaping his run-in with the Headless Horseman said to be haunting Sleepy Hollow himself. Now notice that it's at this point in the sky story that the constellations of Taurus and Orion are found to be at that special crossing point of the north-south meridian line in the arc of the ecliptic. Or Brom Bones is telling his story about having himself escaped the Headless Horseman. Because you can see here in the sky story, the constellation of Aquarius has already descended into the western horizon of the Earth and is no longer visible. And the constellation of Pegasus, along its travels, is also continuing its westward journey. So in other words, the specter of the Headless Horseman is galloping away in the story Brom Bones is telling at this point in the legend of Sleepy Hollow. In this screenshot, we're going ahead 2 more hours on what we commonly celebrate as Halloween, and as we go forward in the legend of Sleepy Hollow, we find that both this story and the Sky story continue to sync up. Ichabod Crane is now leaving the party, feeling down as he's still unsuccessful at this point at winning the heart of the one he's had his eye on this whole time, Katerina Van Tassel. As you can see in the Sky story, how this corresponds with Cetus and Pisces, found both beginning their descent into the western horizon of the Earth. Now, it's at this part of the story that we see the twinning aspect come in. As you can see, it's now the constellation of Gemini, or the twins, found to be at that special crossing point of the north-south meridian line in the arc of the ecliptic. And it's in the legend of Sleepy Hollow sequence where Brom Bones, dressed up as the Headless Horseman, shows up. And in the Sky story, you can see both the constellations of Taurus and Orion, or Brom Bones, chasing Cetus the whale, or Ichabod Crane, as he tries to get away from him. As Brom Bones is dressed up as the Headless Horseman, the flaming jack-o'-lantern he holds as a replacement for his head, corresponding to the constellation of Auriga. As you can see, above Orion's head is encoding for the Headless Horseman's jack-o'-lantern he's about to throw at Ichabod Crane's head. And the horse that Brom Bones, playing the Headless Horseman, is riding corresponds to the constellation we call nowadays Monoceros, or the unicorn, that horse with the single horn on top of its head. That's also just crossed over the north-south meridian line exactly at this time. Moving ahead 2 more hours on what we commonly celebrate as Halloween in the Sky story, we watch how the story ends for Ichabod Crane in the legend of Sleepy Hollow. As Ichabod Crane gets to the other side of the bridge, corresponding with the constellation of Cetus, now descended into the Earth's horizon, just to the point where it's just up to his head. This is the point in the story where Brom Bones, dressed up like the Headless Horseman, throws his flaming jack-o'-lantern at Ichabod Crane's head, and Ichabod falls from his horse to the side of the road. Why is the Headless Horseman's jack-o'-lantern flaming? Well, as you can see, it's because over the eastern horizon, the flame of the sun is just beginning to break at this time in the Sky story. The legend of Sleepy Hollow ends when, the next morning, it's learned that Ichabod Crane has gone missing. And although there are rumors that circulate, he's never heard from again from anyone in Sleepy Hollow. And as you can see in the Sky story, the reason why is because the constellation of Cetus, or Ichabod Crane in this story, has fully descended below the western horizon of the Earth and is no longer visible. But they did search for Ichabod Crane and found only the smashed pumpkin on the side of the road, but no sign was ever found of Ichabod Crane. And whenever Brom Bones, who ended up married to Katerina Van Tassel in the end, was ever asked about the Headless Horseman and the disappearance of Ichabod Crane, he only laughed a bit knowingly, but said nothing more than that. And when you learn that the name Ichabod in Hebrew means without glory, you can see why the name of the character was chosen carefully to reflect what's happening in the ending of this Sky story. Now you know how to correctly decode what is known as America's oldest ghost story, and why it's this story that was written to encode specifically with the Sky story occurring on Halloween. But why is that? Why is Halloween a holy day or a holiday that we celebrate at all? Well, this connects back surprisingly to what we learned while decoding the real purpose of the Sphinx in our last video. Notice that it's the same Sky story alignment that we're looking at again here, found during the first week of what we commonly call March, where the oracle or the all-seeing eye winks for the first time. This is the real reason we celebrate Halloween, and the real reason why it's so significant. It's because on what we call Halloween, in the sky story, this same alignment we've looked at before points us to look for, in just 1 week, or 7 days from this point, to watch once again for the real oracle or the all-seeing eye to wink again. This time in the reverse direction, from where we watched its first wink back in the spring. Here we are now as it's going to do the mirror version or opposite wink in the fall. There's still more to come in another video about this wink phenomenon, but for now, you know why we celebrate the holy day or the holiday known as Halloween, and what the legend of Sleepy Hollow is really all about. We're going to end things here and pick it back up in our next decoding, and we hope for this piece you found it to be a bucket full of truth treats without any tricks. Until next time, be well.